Hey guys, James here from 5-Star Rating 22. Today I get to talk about a very fun technique. Again, this is a simple one. Not going to take much practice to master, but one of those bread and butter techniques that you'll probably be using throughout your painting career. So, what we're talking about is dry brushing. Dry brushing is probably something you've heard of. Even if you've just started out, it's a very common technique. It's used on lots of different things. I mean, you can use it for armor, fur, robes, faces, scales. I mean, it's endless, the places that you can use a good dry brush. Now, with a wash, you're trying to add depth. With a dry brush, you're trying to add light. You're trying to add highlights. You're trying to add light sources where the things that are most protruding are going to catch light first. What I have here, just a simple piece of leftover scratched terrain that I had. Don't mind the pink and blue there. But this is pretty much all black. It's pretty bland. It has been kind of wiped. There are some paints missing, so on the edges and stuff you can see a little bit of gray. But for the most part, it's just plain black. Not very exciting. Doesn't do much. But with a little bit of dry brushing, we can really make this stand out. And let me show you how dry brushing is done. So what do you need to do a dry brush? Well, first of all, you're going to need a paint. Pretty much you can use any paint. I wouldn't use an ink. Ink won't work because you want the paint to be thicker. You want it, they actually make, GW makes dry brushing paint. It's very thick, but you can pretty much use any paint. I'm simply using a game color cold gray paint here. I'm just going to take some. Now I don't like to put this on the wet palette because again we're trying to keep it thick. We don't want it to be thinned out. And I'm going to put on a little thing that I use for a palette sometimes. So I don't need much. Just add a little bit there. So I got a little bit of my paint, and then what do you need? Well, you need a brush. And actually, for dry brushing, it's really good to have a specific type of brush. What I have here, I have two brushes. I have an older Citadel small dry brush here, and I have one of their newer ones, medium Citadel dry brush here. And you don't have to have a Games Workshop or a Citadel dry brush to dry brush, but it is nice to have a brush with hog hairs. Now, hog hairs are a lot coarser. They're a lot stiffer. They're not going to bend and such when they get a little paint on them. They're going to pretty much keep this shape throughout. And as you can see, my older one here, it's starting to flay out a little bit and stuff like that. A lot of times, if you have a brush and it's getting older and it starts to flay out, you can start using it for a dry brush, such as this one here that I have. I believe it was a Dural Gold with synthetic hair, but I've used that for a dry brush. Works pretty good. It's all flayed out, doesn't have much other uses, but it makes a pretty good dry brush. But otherwise, you can go to your local hobby store or art supply store and find a brush with hog hairs. And don't get a huge one unless you're doing a very big area, but something about this size should work rather well. So I got my dry brush. Alright, got my dry brush, got my paint, got my thing I'm going to dry brush. Now, usually what you do when picking your paint, you want a lighter paint than the color, the base coat color that's on there. So this is black. So I chose a kind of darker gray for my first highlight, or first dry brush that I'm going to put on this. It's got raised areas, it's nice and textured, which will make for a good dry brushing candidate. So I'm going to grab some paint, and then what do? Well, I need something to wipe a bunch of the paint off with. So I grabbed some of the paint. I've got here just a piece of kitchen towel or paper towel, and I'm going to actually take and wipe a good majority of this darker gray paint off. So I dried it out a bit, so it doesn't have as much paint there. Still got paint in there, and then I'm just going to simply take and start to kind of go over it back and forth and in different ways, and I'm brushing it on fairly quickly. And what it's going to do is the paint's not going to stick to the flatter areas. It's going to want to catch all the raised areas on the surface. So as you can see there on the rivets and on the skulls, everything, it's starting to get color. It's starting to get highlights. Just brushing over it. So I just keep doing that. If you run out, you just re-dip it, wipe some more of it off, and repeat the process. Alright, so by that first layer of dry brushing, you can see looks way better. Looks so much better. You can start to pick out the skulls, all the bolts, all the rivets, the gap in the door frame. It looks a lot better. that was by one level of dry brushing. Now the cool thing about dry brushing is that you can simply add layers. So I'm going to grab actually white paint now, which is the exact opposite of black. This is a pretty drastic contrast, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit again to my palette here, not much. And as you can see, I didn't wash my brush out or anything. I'm just going to go ahead and grab a little bit of this white paint. Don't need as much. And again, I'm going to wipe it off onto my paper towel or kitchen towel. But this time, I want to get a good majority of it out. Oh, got a little more. Because since I'm building up on top, you can build layers like this, just have less paint. So I got there, a good way to test is to kind of go over your thumb and see how much paint is coming off. So it's not too much, seems about right. So then I'll just go on and not pushing as hard as I did with the first gray. I'll just do the exact same thing. I'm just pushing a little lighter. And the white will catch on some of the raised areas. And it'll help give it even more highlights. The skulls there on the uppermost parts, you know, on the tops of the eyelids and on the jawline there, the white's going to catch. It'll actually add more. See, we left a little more paint on for the first one, with the darker gray, and now we had hardly any paint at all on the brush for this white dry brush. There we go. And as you can see, now it looks pretty nice. I mean, that's a door. You can tell all the details. It's got nice raised areas, and it didn't take much time at all to do that. And the coolest thing is you can use this on all sorts of things. You can use it on scales or fur, or chainmail works really well with dry brushing. It's pretty much endless. I mean, if it looks like you could dry brush it, you can. So hopefully that defines it pretty well. And it's a simple technique, something that it's not going to take you long at all to get it down. You'll start learning good ways of actually doing layers of dry brushing like I just did there. That was a layered dry brush where I did a dark gray and then a white on top of the black, and it can turn out really nice. And there's people who do use softer bristled brush. You don't have to just use a hard bristled like a hog hair brush. You can use a softer bristled brush. It'll have a different effect. So don't be afraid to try it out. Something that you're going to use for a long time. I'm almost sure of that, and there'll be certain circumstances where a dry brush is almost the best way of highlighting it. I find that on fur especially, I still use dry brush over actually going in there and layering it and picking out the raised parts and painting them on. So dry brush is a great thing. It'll save you a ton of times, and again, it's a bread and butter technique, one that you'll be using for a long time to come. So hopefully you liked that. Again, please subscribe, like, leave comments, and tell your friend if you enjoyed. Take care.